She had imagined this moment for 7 months. Every sleepless night in the barracks, every video call that froze mid-sentence, every birthday candle she watched him blow out through a pixelated screen, it all led here. Captain Melissa Thornton pressed the last crease into her marine dress blues and stared at herself in the motel mirror. Metals polished, shoulders squared, hands trembling. Today, she wasn't a captain. She was a mother. And she was going to watch her only son graduate from high school if it was the last thing she did. She hadn't told him she was coming. She wanted to see his face, really see it, when he realized she had kept her promise. But what Melissa didn't know, what she couldn't have prepared for, was that before Ryan ever saw her face, someone in that auditorium would try to erase her from the room. And what happened next would be talked about for years. Welcome to the channel. Before we get into this story, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from, whether it's Texas, California, Florida, New York, or anywhere else across the country. We love seeing just how far these stories travel. Now let's get into it.
I miss my little boy so much.
What do you think you are doing here, madam?
Madam, I think you need to leave right now.
The motel room smelled like starch and cheap lavender air freshener. Captain Melissa Thornton stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her Marine Corps dress blue uniform, tugging at the collar for the 4th time in 3 minutes. The metals were polished. She had done that last night, sitting cross-legged on the bed with a soft cloth and a glass of wine she never finished. The ribbons were straight. The white gloves were pressed. Everything was regulation perfect. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She set her palms flat against the counter and looked at herself. 41 years old. 16 years of active service. 3 deployments. 2 mercy missions. 1 son. 1 son she hadn't hugged in 7 months. She picked up her phone and scrolled to the last text from Ryan. It was 3 weeks old. Grandma says hi. That was it. No, miss you. No, when are you coming home? Just a relay message, like she was a colleague, not his mother. She locked the phone and dropped it in her clutch. You're going, she told the mirror. You're going, and you're going to sit in that auditorium, and you're going to watch your boy walk across that stage, and you are not going to cry until you get back to this room. The mirror didn't argue, but Melissa's chest felt like it was being sat on. She grabbed the room key and walked out into the Virginia morning. Chesapeake in June, humid enough to curl paper. The drive to Riverside High School was 12 minutes. She had mapped it twice. 22 miles away, Ryan Thornton was standing in his grandmother's kitchen, fighting with a tie. Let me help you, Gloria Thornton said, reaching for the knot. I got it, Grandma. He jerked the fabric through again. The knot collapsed. Gloria watched him with patient eyes. She had raised this boy for the better part of 6 years. Not because Melissa didn't love him, but because Melissa loved the country too, and the country kept calling. Gloria never blamed her daughter. She did, however, worry about the boy who stopped asking when Mom was coming home. You look handsome, Gloria said softly. Thanks. Your mother would be proud. Ryan's jaw tightened. He pulled the tie loose and started over. She's not coming, Grandma. She's got training ops in Pendleton through the end of the month. She told me. Gloria said nothing. She had received a very different phone call 2 days ago, one that made her cry into a dish towel, but she had promised to keep the secret. So she just smiled and straightened the collar of his shirt. You never know, she said. Yeah, Ryan said flatly. I do. He grabbed his graduation cap off the counter and walked to the car without looking back. Gloria stood at the kitchen window and pressed her hand against the glass. You better show up, baby girl, she whispered to no one. That boy needs you today. At Riverside High, the auditorium was filling. Parents with cameras, siblings with balloons, grandparents moving slowly down the aisles, clutching programs like treasure maps to a future they had helped build. The parking lot was already a mess. Minivans double parked, a woman chasing a toddler across the grass, a father adjusting his tie in the reflection of a car window. Inside, the gymnasium had been transformed. Folding chairs stretched in precise rows. A makeshift stage held a podium draped in maroon and gold, Riverside High colors. A banner the size of a bedsheet read Class of 2026 in glittering letters that some PTA mother had spent a weekend painting. The air smelled like floor polish and too many competing perfumes. Ryan filed in with his class, cap crooked, gown unzipped at the collar. He had grown 4 inches in the past year, and the gown was already too short. His dress shoes poked out beneath the hem like a joke. His best friend, Tyler Brooks, nudged him. "Your grandma coming?" "Yeah. Front section. Your mom." Ryan looked straight ahead. "Nah." Tyler knew better than to push. He had slept over enough times to understand what that word carried. He had seen the half-written letters in Ryan's desk drawer. He had heard Gloria praying through the wall at midnight. Ryan took his seat in the 3rd row of graduates. The band started tuning. The lights dimmed. And without meaning to, without giving himself permission, Ryan glanced at the auditorium doors. Just once. Just in case. Have you ever waited for someone who you weren't sure would come? Drop a comment and tell us about a moment when showing up meant everything. Melissa pulled into the parking lot at 5:47 p.m. The ceremony started at 6. She sat in the car for 2 full minutes, gripping the steering wheel, breathing through her nose the way they taught in combat stress training. In, out, in, out. She checked the mirror one final time, adjusted the brim of her cover, straightened the lapel. Then she opened the door and stepped into the heat. The walk from the parking lot to the auditorium entrance felt longer than any convoy route she had ever ridden. Her dress shoes clicked against the concrete. 2 women in sundresses turned and stared. A man in a polo shirt gave a half nod, the kind people give when they don't know whether to salute or smile. She pulled open the glass door and entered the building. The hallway was lined with student artwork and trophy cases, state championships in wrestling, debate team plaques, a faded banner from a food drive in 2019 that no one had bothered to take down. The linoleum reflected her shoes as she walked. Somewhere, a custodian was sweeping. The mundane routine of a school carrying on even as hundreds of lives were about to change in the room ahead. She could hear the murmur of the auditorium, that low, electric hum of a room full of love and anticipation. The sound of families gathering. The sound she had listened to from the wrong side of a phone for too many years. She squared her shoulders and walked in. It didn't happen all at once. It happened in waves. The first person to notice was a woman near the aisle, late 40s, holding a bouquet of roses. Her eyes moved from Melissa's face to her medals to the white gloves and back. She touched her husband's arm. He turned. Then the row behind them. Then the row behind that. Conversations didn't stop. They thinned. Like someone slowly turning down the volume on a radio. Heads rotated. Programs lowered. A few phones came up. Melissa kept her eyes forward, her face calm, her heart detonating behind her ribs. She found an empty seat 6 rows from the back, on the left side. She sat down, folded her gloves in her lap, and exhaled. I made it, she thought. I'm here. For 45 seconds, the world was kind. Then she felt a presence at her shoulder. A woman in a navy blazer with a Riverside High staff badge clipped to her chest leaned in. Her name tag read, Dana Crawford, Vice Principal. Excuse me, ma'am? Melissa turned. Yes. Dana Crawford smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. We appreciate your service, of course. But we'd appreciate it if you didn't make this a military moment. The ceremony is about the students. Your uniform is drawing attention. Would you mind stepping outside? Melissa blinked. She had been asked to do a great many things in her career. She had been asked to hold pressure on a femoral bleed in a moving helicopter. She had been asked to keep a 19-year-old Marine alive long enough for him to hear his mother's voice on the phone one last time. She had been asked to lead a 12-person medical team through a live fire zone with no air support and nothing but flashlights and faith. But she had never been asked to leave a room for wearing her uniform. I'm not here to make a statement, Melissa said quietly. I'm here for my son. Dana's smile tightened. I understand. But the outfit is creating a disruption. If you could wait in the lobby, we can arrange for you to see him after the ceremony. The outfit. She called it an outfit. Melissa looked at the stage. She couldn't see Ryan from here. The graduates were seated in rows, and the angle was wrong. He didn't even know she was in the building. If she left now, quietly, no one would know. Ryan wouldn't know. He would graduate thinking she didn't come, just like he expected, and Gloria would drive him home and make him a cake, and that would be that. And something inside Melissa, something old and tired and trained to absorb punishment without complaint, said, don't make a scene. Don't embarrass your son. Just go. So she stood. She picked up her clutch. She nodded once at Dana Crawford, a sharp, military nod that carried no agreement, only discipline, and she turned toward the aisle. She had taken 3 steps when she heard the sound. It was a chair, a single folding chair scraping against the gymnasium floor. Then another, then a third. Melissa didn't turn around. She kept walking, eyes fixed on the exit sign, jaw locked. Behind her, the scraping multiplied. 4 chairs, 5, 6, and then there were footsteps. Heavy ones, the kind made by men who had been trained to move with purpose. But she didn't stop. She had spent her entire adult life learning not to stop. In the hallway, the fluorescent light was harsh and unflattering. The muffled sound of the auditorium bled through the doors like something underwater. Melissa leaned against the wall and pressed her forehead to the cool cinder block. Her eyes burned, but no tears fell. She wouldn't allow it. Not here. Not now. You knew this could happen, she told herself. You know what the uniform does to people. Some see a hero. Some see a headline. You should have worn a dress. You should have come as just a mother. But she didn't own a dress. She hadn't bought civilian clothes in 3 years. Everything she had was olive drab, or dress blue, or hospital scrubs. The uniform wasn't a costume. It was her skin. She pressed her palms flat against the wall and took a breath. Inside the auditorium, Ryan Thornton was scanning the crowd again. He couldn't help it. His eyes swept the left section, the right, the back rows. He saw Gloria in the 4th row, dabbing her eyes already even though nothing had happened yet. He saw Tyler's parents with matching polo shirts. He saw a blur of strangers. No uniform. No mother. He set his jaw and looked straight ahead. The principal was testing the microphone. The vice principal's seat was empty. None of that mattered. She's not here, he told himself. Stop looking. She's in California. She's always somewhere else. He adjusted his cap and crossed his arms. Back in the hallway, Melissa heard the auditorium door open. She straightened immediately. Habit, instinct, training. She expected Dana Crawford. She expected security. Instead, she saw a man. He was tall, at least 6'2", with broad shoulders and a close-crop fade that told you everything you needed to know before he opened his mouth. He wore a dark gray suit, but the posture was unmistakable. Every line of his body said Marine. He stopped a few feet from her and stood at ease, hands clasped behind his back. Captain Thornton, he said. Not a question. Melissa studied him. Do I know you? No, ma'am. Gunnery Sergeant Mason Calloway. 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. I'm here for my niece's graduation. He paused. I saw what happened in there. Melissa's expression didn't change. It's fine. I don't want to cause a problem. You're not the problem, Captain. I appreciate that, Sergeant. But my son is in there, and the last thing I want is for his graduation to turn into some kind of... With respect, ma'am. Mason's voice was steady, the way a man's voice gets when he's choosing every word like he's selecting a weapon. I watched a woman in a staff badge tell a Marine captain, in uniform, with combat decorations, that she was a distraction. And I watched that captain stand up and leave without a word because she was thinking about her son before herself. He paused. That's not a distraction. That's the definition of a mother. Melissa stared at him for a long time. I don't need someone to fight for me, she said. Mason almost smiled. I know you don't. But maybe your son does. They stood in the hallway for a while. Neither moved. Through the auditorium doors, they could hear the muffled voice of Principal Mark Jones beginning his welcome address. Melissa checked her watch. The ceremony was underway. Ryan's name would be called in roughly 40 minutes. How long has it been? Mason asked. Since you've seen him. 7 months. I was at Camp Pendleton running a trauma simulation program. Before that, I was at Landstuhl. She paused. He thinks I chose it. Did you? I chose to serve. I didn't choose to miss his life. She looked at the ceiling. Those aren't the same thing. But try explaining that to a 17-year-old. Mason nodded slowly. He leaned against the opposite wall, creating a respectful distance between them. My niece, Brianna, she's the whole reason I'm here. Her father, my brother, passed 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. I promised him I'd be there for the milestones. I'm sorry, Melissa said. She meant it. My wife, too. Catherine. She died while I was deployed. Car accident on I-64, 3 years ago this October. He touched his chest, just below the collar, where Melissa guessed his dog tags hung beneath the suit jacket. I wasn't there for that either. The hallway was quiet. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Do you ever stop feeling guilty? Melissa asked. No, Mason said. But you learn to carry it different. Guilt's like a ruck. It doesn't get lighter, but your legs get stronger. Melissa let out a breath that was almost a laugh. That's the most Marine thing anyone has ever said to me. Mason's mouth twitched, the first crack in his composure. My wife used to say I talk like a recruiting poster. Smart woman. The smartest. He was quiet for a moment. She would have hated what that vice principal just did. Catherine couldn't stand people who confused authority with righteousness. She used to say, some people don't want order, they want obedience. Learn the difference. I like her already, Melissa said. You would have. Everyone did. Mason reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He scrolled to a photo and held it up. A woman with warm brown eyes and braids, laughing at something off camera, a beach behind her. That's the last picture I have of her laughing. Took it in Virginia Beach, 6 weeks before the accident. Melissa studied the photo. She's beautiful. She was everything. He put the phone away. And the worst part isn't that she's gone. The worst part is that I was 8,000 miles away when it happened, doing a job I told myself was more important than being home. It wasn't. Nothing was more important than being home. The hallway felt smaller. The fluorescent light felt softer. Two people who had spent their lives being strong stood 4 feet apart and let themselves be something else. Through the door, they heard applause, probably a student speaker finishing remarks. Time was moving. Melissa looked at the auditorium entrance, then at the parking lot exit. 2 doors. 2 choices. I could just wait out here, she said. Find him after. You could, Mason agreed. But you didn't fly across the country to stand in a hallway. I don't want to embarrass him. Captain, have you considered that the only person embarrassed right now is you? It landed like a grenade. Melissa opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Your son doesn't know you're here, Mason continued. He hasn't seen the uniform. He hasn't seen the vice principal. All he knows right now is that his mother didn't come. And every second you stand in this hallway, that's what he believes. Melissa's eyes glistened. She blinked hard. I don't even know if he wants me there, she whispered. Then let's go find out. He extended his hand, not to shake, but to guide. A steady, open palm, pointed toward the auditorium door. Not pushing. Just offering. Melissa looked at his hand, then at his face. He had kind eyes, the kind that had seen terrible things, and chose warmth anyway. She straightened her cover, set her shoulders, and walked back toward the door. Mason followed. They re-entered the auditorium through the side door, slipping into seats near the back corner. The lights were dimmed for a video montage, baby photos of the graduating class dissolving into senior portraits. Parents were sniffling. Camera phones glowed like fireflies. Melissa watched the screen and recognized Ryan instantly, a round-faced baby in a onesie that said Future Marine, that she had bought as a joke 7 weeks before her first deployment. The next photo was Ryan at age 6, holding a crayon drawing of a stick figure in green. Underneath, in wobbly letters, my MOM is a hero. Melissa pressed her knuckles against her lips. Then came a photo she hadn't seen before. Ryan at 8, sitting at a kitchen table with a single birthday candle and a cupcake, Gloria behind him with her hands on his shoulders. He wasn't smiling. His eyes were looking at something off camera, a laptop screen. Melissa recognized the angle. That was the night she had called from Afghanistan to sing him happy birthday. Except she hadn't called. She had tried. She had dialed 3 times from the comm tent. But a convoy had been hit outside Bagram, and 7 Marines came in on stretchers, and she had spent 14 hours in the field hospital with blood on her boots and someone else's prayers in her ears. By the time she got back to the comm tent, it was 4 in the morning in Virginia, and Gloria had texted. He waited up until midnight. He's asleep now. Melissa had sat on a crate outside the medical tent and cried so hard her commanding officer thought she'd been injured. She had called the next morning, 5 a.m. Virginia time. Ryan answered on the second ring, which meant he hadn't slept. His voice was flat. Happy birthday, buddy. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Mom. It's not okay. I wanted to call. There was an incident, and Mom. It's okay. People needed you. He was 8 years old. 8. And he had already learned to forgive her with the resignation of a boy who understood that his mother belonged to something bigger than him. That acceptance, so quiet, so adult, so devastating, had haunted Melissa more than any combat zone she had ever entered. Now that photo was on a 50-foot screen, and every parent in the room was seeing the boy with the cupcake and the empty chair. Mason glanced at her. He said nothing. But he shifted slightly, so his shoulder was closer to hers. Not touching, just present. The montage ended. The lights came up. Applause. Melissa wiped her eyes and straightened. "You okay?" Mason murmured. "No," she said. "But I'm staying." During the next pause in the program, Mason leaned over. "You said he thinks you chose the Marines over him." "Because I did. Not on purpose, but I did. Every time I re-upped, every time I took a new assignment, I was choosing. I told myself it was for his future. Better benefits, better pension, college fund. But you can't deposit a hug." Mason nodded. "When Catherine died, I found a letter she'd written but never sent. It said, 'I love you, but I can't keep missing you.' It's not the distance. It's knowing you chose the distance." Melissa looked at him. Did she mean it? Every word. And she was right. He touched the spot on his chest again, the dog tags. "I carry her ring here. Remind myself every morning that love doesn't survive on good intentions. It survives on presence." "Is that why you're here for Brianna?" "That's why I'm here for everyone I can be here for now." He looked at her. "Including you, Captain." There was a weight to the way he said it. Not flirtation, something deeper. Recognition. The way you look at someone and realize their scars match yours. Melissa didn't respond. But she didn't look away, either. In the third row of graduates, Ryan was fidgeting. The student speaker was wrapping up. Diplomas were about to be called. He pulled out his phone under his gown and texted Gloria. "Is she here?" Gloria, in the fourth row, saw the text and felt her heart crack. She typed back, "Just watch the stage, baby. Be proud of yourself tonight." Ryan read the message, read it again, and put his phone away. He didn't look at the doors again. The ceremony moved into the scholarship announcements. Names were called. Applause swelled and faded. Melissa and Mason sat in the back corner like two people hiding in plain sight. "Tell me something good about him," Mason said. "About Ryan?" "Yeah, not the hard stuff. Something good." Melissa's face changed. The tension in her jaw softened, and for the first time all evening, something close to a genuine smile touched her lips. "He fixes cars," she said. "Old ones. He found a 1971 Chevy Chevelle in a junkyard last year and convinced my mother to let him tow it into the garage. He's been rebuilding the engine piece by piece. Watches YouTube videos, orders parts with his own money from his weekend job. A Chevelle? Kid's got taste. He's got patience. That's what surprises me. He'll spend 4 hours on a single carburetor. Won't eat, won't sleep. Just works." She paused. "He gets that from me, I think. The stubbornness." "That's not stubbornness," Mason said. "That's commitment. There's a difference." "You think so? I know so. Stubborn people hold on because they're afraid to let go. Committed people hold on because they know what they're holding is worth the pain." He looked at her. "You didn't re-enlist 5 times because you're stubborn. You did it because you believe in something. Your son takes engines apart and puts them back together because he believes in something too. Maybe it's the same thing. The idea that broken things deserve a second chance." Melissa was quiet. She hadn't thought about it that way. She had always assumed Ryan's obsession with old cars was rebellion, a way of building something she couldn't take away. But maybe Mason was right. Maybe it was inheritance. "When did he start?" Mason asked. 2 years ago, right after I extended my deployment at Landstuhl. He didn't talk to me for 3 weeks after I told him. Then Gloria sent me a video of him in the garage with a wrench, covered in grease, grinning like an idiot. She said, "He won't call you, but he's not angry anymore. He's building." Mason nodded slowly. Kids process grief in strange ways. Brianna started boxing after my brother died. Not competitively, just at the gym, hitting a bag for 2 hours a day. Her therapist said she was externalizing. I said she was surviving. "Same thing," Melissa said. "Same thing," Mason agreed. Melissa looked at him. "You're very good at reframing things, Gunnery Sergeant. Call me Mason. We're at a high school graduation, not a briefing." "Fine. Mason." She tested the name. It fit. Solid, unhurried, warm. "What about your niece? Tell me something good." "Brianna wants to enlist." He shook his head, but he was smiling. "My brother would have hated it. He always said 1 Callaway in the Marines was more than enough. But she's got that fire, you know? She's already talking to a recruiter. She'll be good at it. She'll be terrifying at it." She once argued a parking ticket down to a warning using nothing but eye contact and the Constitution. Melissa laughed, a real one, the kind that escapes before you can catch it. Two parents in the row ahead turned and glanced back. Melissa covered her mouth, but her eyes were bright. Mason watched her laugh, and something shifted in his chest. Something tectonic, something he hadn't felt since before Catherine's accident. He looked away quickly, then looked back. "Can I tell you something?" he said. "Sure. When I saw you walk into this auditorium tonight, full dress blues, medals, cover, everything, I thought, that woman is not here for recognition. I could tell by the way you sat down. Quiet. Small. Trying to take up as little space as possible. That's not someone looking for attention. That's someone praying not to be noticed." Melissa's eyes locked on his. "I noticed," he said simply. The auditorium lights flickered, a signal that the diploma procession was about to begin. Parents shifted in their seats. Cameras were raised. The moment between Melissa and Mason didn't break. It folded itself up and tucked itself away, like a letter saved for later. "They're starting," Melissa whispered. "Then let's make sure you have a view. If you can't stand bullies, the kind who try to make good people feel small, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. This story isn't over yet." The diploma procession had just begun, last names starting with A, moving alphabetically, when Dana Crawford reappeared. This time, she wasn't alone. Beside her was a man in a security polo and, trailing behind, Principal Mark Jones, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Dana stopped at the end of Melissa's row. "Ma'am," she said, her voice low but hard. "I asked you to wait in the lobby." Melissa felt the blood drain from her face. Not from fear, from fury. The kind she had trained herself to bury. The kind that had no place at her son's graduation. "I'm watching my son graduate," Melissa said. Her voice was steady. "Barely. And I've explained that your presence in uniform is disrupting the event. We've already received complaints." "From who?" Mason asked, his voice a controlled bass. Dana didn't look at him. "That's not your concern, sir. It is when you're harassing a decorated officer at a public ceremony. No one is harassing anyone. We're maintaining the integrity of the event." Dana turned to the security officer. "James, please escort." "Don't." Mason stood. His full height was considerable, and in the dim auditorium, he blocked the light from the stage. "Don't finish that sentence." The security officer, James, looked at Mason, then at Dana, then at his own shoes. He clearly wanted no part of this. The commotion had drawn attention. Heads in the surrounding rows were turning. A murmur rippled outward. Melissa felt every eye like a spotlight, and the old voice inside her, the one that always chose silence, always chose retreat, screamed at her to leave. She stood. "It's fine," she said to Mason. "I'll go. Captain, I'm not going to let this ruin his night." Her voice cracked on the last word, and she hated herself for it. She picked up her clutch and stepped into the aisle. Then a chair scraped behind her. A man in a charcoal suit, mid-50s, silver at the temples, stood up in the fourth row. He didn't say a word. He just stood, hands at his sides, chin level. On his lapel, a small gold pin, the eagle, globe, and anchor. Then a woman 3 seats down. She was younger, maybe 30, with a high and tight hidden under a headband. She rose with the silence of someone who had stood watch in worse places. Then another, and another. One by one, 12 Marines in that auditorium. Some in suits, some in casual clothes. One in a wheelchair, one holding a sleeping baby, stood up. The auditorium went dead silent. Principal Jones stared. Dana Crawford's mouth opened, then closed. Mason Calloway stepped into the aisle beside Melissa and faced the crowd. His voice was clear, calm, and carried the weight of 22 years of service. Captain Thornton never asked for recognition. She showed up as a mother. But since some people in this room forgot what that uniform represents, we'll remind them. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. For a moment, the silence held, thick, electric, sacred. Then someone in the middle section began to clap. Slow at first, then faster, then the row behind them, then the section beside them, then the entire auditorium. The applause wasn't polite. It was the kind that shakes the walls. It was the kind that comes from the chest, not the hands. Dana Crawford stepped backward. Then she turned and walked briskly up the aisle and through the exit doors. Principal Jones stood frozen for a moment. Then he moved forward. Captain Thornton, he said, his face flushed. I owe you a personal apology. That should never have happened. Melissa couldn't speak. She nodded. Please, Jones said, gesturing to the front row. Sit wherever you'd like. Melissa was escorted to the front row. Mason returned to his seat with a nod. The applause had faded, but the energy in the room hadn't. It hummed, the way a room hums after a lightning strike. The diploma procession resumed. Names were called. Students walked across the stage. Handshakes, smiles, camera flashes. The rhythm of the ceremony carried on. But in the third row of graduates, Ryan Thornton was not moving. He had heard the applause. He had seen the standing. From his angle, he couldn't see who they were standing for. Too many heads, too many bodies. But something in the quality of the sound told him it wasn't for a speech or a scholarship. It was something bigger. Then Tyler leaned over. Dude, Tyler whispered. I think your mom's here. Ryan's stomach dropped. What? Front row. In a uniform. Look, Ryan craned his neck. Past the rows of caps and gowns, past the stage lights, past the blur of faces. And there, in the front row, sitting straight as a flagpole, was a woman in marine dress blues. Her cover was in her lap. Her medals caught the light. His mother. She was here. Ryan's whole body went still. Not the stillness of calm. The stillness of a boy who had spent years building a wall and just felt the first brick fall. She came. The thought was so simple, so small, so enormous that it filled his entire chest and left no room for air. She actually came. He thought about every night he had lain in bed and stared at the ceiling and told himself he didn't care. He thought about every time Gloria had said, "Your mama loves you," and he had said, "Then where is she?" He thought about the letter he wrote when he was 12, the one he never sent because he found it too embarrassing, the one that said, "I don't need presents. I just need you to come home." She had come home, not to the house, not to a video call. She had come here, to this room, in this uniform, to watch him walk 20 feet across a stage and receive a piece of paper. She had come for him. The names kept going. The T's were approaching. Ryan's hands were trembling under his gown. Thornton, Ryan Michael. He stood. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. He walked toward the stage steps and climbed them. The stage lights hit him, and the auditorium stretched out below, a sea of faces, cameras, programs, pride. And in the front row, his mother. Their eyes met. Melissa's hand went to her mouth. She had rehearsed this moment. In the motel, in the car, in her head for 7 months. And now it was here, and every rehearsed word was gone. There was only Ryan. Her boy. Taller than she remembered. Broader in the shoulders. Still her baby. Ryan took the diploma from Principal Jones. He shook the principal's hand. He turned toward the steps. And then he stopped. He was supposed to walk off stage. He was supposed to file back to his seat. That was the protocol, the procedure, the expected path. Every graduate before him had done exactly that. Ryan looked at the steps. Then he looked at his mother. He had a choice. Follow the line. Stay in formation. Do what was expected. Or break rank. For her. The auditorium was watching. Every phone was up. Every eye was on the boy standing on the stage with a diploma in one hand and a decision in both. Ryan set his jaw. Not in anger this time, but in something fiercer. He stepped off the stage, walked past the line of graduates waiting to return to their seats, and headed straight for the front row. Ryan reached his mother in 6 steps. Melissa was already standing. Instinct, reflex, the pull of something stronger than protocol. She opened her mouth to say his name, but no sound came out. Her vision blurred. Her hands reached forward. Ryan dropped the diploma. It fluttered to the ground between them like a leaf. And then he was in her arms. He was taller than her now. She had to reach up to hold the back of his head, the way she had when he was small enough to carry. His graduation cap fell off. His arms wrapped around her so tightly, she felt his heartbeat against her medals. "You came," he said. His voice was raw. "You actually came. I wouldn't miss this for anything." She was crying now, openly, completely, without apology. Her tears fell on his gown, on his shoulder, on the diploma at their feet. "I thought you weren't coming," he whispered into her neck. "I told everyone you weren't coming. I know, baby. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry." He pulled back just enough to look at her face. His eyes were red. His jaw was trembling. "Just don't go again. Okay? Please don't go again." Melissa cupped his face in her white-gloved hands and pressed her forehead to his. I'm here. I'm right here. The auditorium had gone silent again, but this silence was different from the one before. The first silence had been shock. This one was reverence. 500 people watched a mother and son find each other in the space between duty and love, and not a single one of them reached for a program or checked a phone. Gloria, in the fourth row, was sobbing into a handkerchief. Tyler was wiping his eyes with the sleeve of his gown. Even Principal Jones had turned away to compose himself. After a long moment, Ryan pulled back. He straightened. He picked up his diploma from the floor, wiped his face with the back of his hand, and looked at his mother. Then he did something no one expected. He stepped back one pace. He set his feet shoulder-width apart. He squared his shoulders. And with the precision of someone who had watched his mother do it 1,000 times on video calls, on base visits, in photos on the mantelpiece, Ryan Thornton raised his right hand to his brow and delivered a salute. Not sloppy, not theatrical. A clean, sharp, full Marine salute. To his mother, the captain. Melissa's breath caught. She had received salutes from generals, from colonels, from young Marines who were scared and brave and looking for someone to believe in. None of them, not one in 16 years, had ever hit like this. She returned it, mother and son, saluting each other in the front row of a high school auditorium, while 500 people rose to their feet. The applause that followed wasn't applause. It was a roar. It came from the gut of the room, parents stomping, students cheering, teachers clapping until their palms burned. The 12 Marines in the audience stood tallest of all. This time, the ovation wasn't for the uniform. It wasn't for the medals. It wasn't for the branch or the rank or the service record. It was for the mother who wore it. The rest of the ceremony was a blur. Names were called. Diplomas were given. Caps were thrown. But the story everyone told afterward. In the parking lot, on the drive home, on social media, at dinner tables for years to come, was about the captain and her son. Afterward, Melissa stood in the lobby with Ryan and Gloria. Ryan hadn't let go of her hand. I was going to leave, Melissa admitted. Someone asked me to. Ryan's face darkened. Who? It doesn't matter now. It matters to me. Gloria squeezed Ryan's arm. What matters is she didn't leave. She stayed. Ryan looked at his mother. Because you're stubborn. Because I'm your mother. She smiled through swollen eyes. Same thing. The lobby was thinning out when Mason Calloway appeared. He had his niece with him, Brianna, a beaming girl in a gold cap who was already talking about boot camp. Mason stopped a few feet from Melissa. Captain, he said. Then he corrected himself. Melissa. She looked at him and felt the evening's weight shift, not heavier, just different. Warmer. Mason. Brianna looked between them and smirked. The kind of smirk that said she understood exactly what was happening before either of them did. Uncle Mason, is this the captain you were talking about in the car on the way here? Mason cleared his throat. Brianna. He called you impressive, Brianna told Melissa cheerfully. Twice. Brianna, go find your grandmother. She's right there. Then go find her closer. Brianna laughed, hugged Mason, and bounced away to a cluster of friends. Ryan watched the exchange with barely concealed amusement. Mason turned back to Melissa. His composure had slipped just enough to show something underneath. Nervousness, maybe. Or hope. You've got a brave kid, he said, glancing at Ryan. I know. And you've got lousy luck with vice principals. Melissa laughed softly. I've had worse luck. Mason hesitated. Melissa saw it. The pause, the calculation, the way a man decides whether to cross a line. She recognized it because she had lived inside that same hesitation her entire career. Play it safe. Stay in formation. Don't risk the mission. But tonight, the rules had already been broken. By a vice principal who chose power over grace. By 12 Marines who chose solidarity over silence. By a boy who chose his mother over protocol. Every rule that mattered had already been rewritten. I don't usually do this, Mason said. But I'd like to take you and your son to dinner. If you're free. Melissa felt something loosen in her chest. A knot she had been carrying so long she had forgotten it wasn't part of her anatomy. Before she could answer, Ryan stepped forward. He had been listening to every word, studying Mason with the quiet intensity of a boy who had spent years being the man of the house and wasn't sure he was ready to share the job. You a Marine? Ryan asked. 22 years, Mason said. You the one who stood up for my mom in there. One of 12. Your mother didn't need defending. She just needed someone to remind the room what they were looking at. Ryan studied him for another beat. Then he grinned. The first full, unguarded grin Melissa had seen from him in years. She likes Italian, Ryan said. Melissa looked at her son, then at Mason. Two people, two invitations. One to rebuild what had been broken, and one to build something entirely new. Italian sounds perfect, she said. They walked out of the school together. Melissa, Ryan, Gloria, Mason, Brianna, into a June evening that smelled like cut grass and possibility. Ryan held his diploma in one hand and his mother's hand in the other. Mason walked beside them, close enough that his shoulder brushed Melissa's. Mom, Ryan said as they crossed the parking lot. Yeah, your uniform looks really good. Melissa laughed, the kind of laugh that lifts you off the ground and sets you down somewhere better. Thanks, baby. But next time, wear regular clothes. You're embarrassing. Deal. Behind them, the auditorium lights went dark. The chairs were folded. The stage was cleared. The banner that read Class of 2026 rustled in the evening breeze. And somewhere inside that empty room, the echo of a salute still hung in the air, given not from soldier to soldier, but from a son to the bravest woman he knew. The mother who always came back. What did this story make you feel? Has someone ever showed up for you when you'd given up hoping? Tell us in the comments. We read every single one.